So friends, it looks like a Donald Trump indictment is finally happening. Let's talk about that, because justice matters. Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So friends, Donald Trump just had a really bad 24 hours. These three stories just broke in rapid succession. First, from NBC New York, New York City security preparations underway for possible Trump indictment as soon as next week. This from the Daily Beast, Trump's lawyer pledges ex-president will turn himself in if indicted. And then this from CNN. Trump attorney ordered to testify before grand jury investigating former president. And that article begins, in a monumental ruling Friday, a federal judge ordered Donald Trump attorney Evan Corcoran to provide additional testimony as part of an investigation into the former president's handling of classified documents, a source familiar with the matter told CNN. Corcoran has the potential to become one of the most crucial witnesses in Special Counsel Jack Smith's criminal investigation into possible mishandling of classified records after the Trump presidency and obstruction of justice. District Judge Beryl Howell said in an order under seal that Justice Department prosecutors have met the threshold for the crime-fraud exception for Corcoran, the sources said. Okay, friends, let's talk about these three stories. Now, the first two are self-explanatory. In New York, there are law enforcement preparations underway in anticipation of Trump being indicted next week. And once he's indicted, he has to be brought to the jurisdiction, presented to the court, and arraigned on the indictment. Arraignment is a technical legal term. It is the first appearance after you've been indicted, so the court can put you on notice of what the grand jury is indicting you for, what you're being charged with, what you will have to defend against come trial. How about the second story? Donald Trump's attorney has pledged that Donald Trump will appear voluntarily. No need to come lock him up. No need to put handcuffs on him. No need for a perp walk. Well, that seems to be the only reason Donald Trump's attorney said, no, he will show up when you want, where you want. He will self-surrender so he can be booked and then presented to the court, arraigned on the indictment. It seems like the only reason Donald Trump is doing that is because he wants to avoid photographs of him in handcuffs being perp walked. I, for one, have never been a fan of the perp walk. Yes, it can feel very satisfying for somebody who has been committing crimes against the United States of America, against we the people for years. It can be very satisfying to see him in cuffs, but I'm not a fan of the perp walk. I frankly think we should be above that. But I think that's why Donald Trump's lawyer said, no, he'll turn himself in. No need to come get him. Now, mind you, he will still be booked. He will be booked by the police. What does booking involve? Filling out a lot of police forms, getting background information about Donald Trump, and taking mug shots and fingerprints. So he can avoid the perp walk. Perhaps he can avoid pictures of him in handcuffs. That remains to be seen, but there will be mug shots taken of Donald Trump, and I have a feeling those will be released fairly promptly. But I really want to turn to the third story. It's a more substantive story. Chief Judge Beryl Howell in federal court in D.C. ordered Evan Corcoran, one of Donald Trump's criminal defense attorneys, to testify about Donald Trump's documents crimes at Mar-a-Lago. Judge Beryl Howell ruled that way because she concluded there was enough evidence that Donald Trump and Evan Corcoran were either involved in crime together or Donald Trump was using Evan Corcoran unwittingly in furtherance of his, Donald Trump's, crimes. So There are now kind of two ways that an Evan Corcoran grand jury appearance can go. First of all, the article says this is a monumental ruling. It is pretty monumental because rarely do we try to go after the attorney who's representing the defendant, the attorney who's representing the target of the grand jury investigation, and try to get that attorney to testify about the crimes of the client or about the statements made by the client. Why? Because there is this broad, overarching attorney-client privilege that ordinarily prosecutors can't pierce, we can't violate, we can't break through unless we have evidence that the client and the attorney have been engaged in criminal conduct together in one way or another. Beryl Howell said, yep, I've made that finding. The attorney-client privilege yields, it is pierced, and Evan Corcoran has to testify. Here are the two ways this can now go. If Evan Corcoran was complicit in Donald Trump's crimes, Evan Corcoran knew full well that what he was doing was in furtherance of Donald Trump's crimes, then I would fully expect Evan Corcoran to go into the grand jury, now that he's been ordered that there's no attorney-client privilege preventing him from testifying, but he will go in there and he will plead the fifth. He will invoke his own Fifth Amendment right against self-incriminations for his criminal conduct. That is still a viable privilege. The attorney-client privilege goes away, but Evan Corcoran, under those circumstances, if he knows he did something wrong, could still plead the fifth. What happens if Evan Corcoran pleads the fifth? Well, the Department of Justice has a decision to make. One of two ways to go. Jack Smith and his team. They can try to prosecute Evan Corcoran for his crimes if they think they have enough evidence to do that. Or they can grant him immunity. Because if you grant somebody immunity, that extinguishes that person's Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination, because his statements can't be used against him if you immunize him. If I had to bet $1, I'm not a high roller, that's my betting limit, I would bet $1 that if push comes to shove, the Department of Justice, Jack Smith's team, may very well immunize Evan Corcoran. Why? Because he is small potatoes. But if we can use his immunized testimony to prove Donald Trump committed crimes, that to me seems more important and more valuable than being able to charge, indict, prosecute Evan Corcoran for whatever crimes he may have committed in furtherance of assisting Donald Trump in his criminal conduct. Here's the other way it could go. Let's assume that Evan Corcoran didn't know he was doing anything wrong. Whatever he said to the Department of Justice when he was certifying that all of the classified documents had been turned over, which turned out to be a stone-cold lie, it was false, it was untrue, because thereafter the FBI secured a search warrant and found hundreds of classified documents in Donald Trump's office, in Donald Trump's drawers, in storage rooms at Mar-a-Lago. Let's assume Evan Corcoran honestly believes that he was provided information that he thought was truthful, even though it turned out to be false. Therefore, he didn't do anything wrong. He didn't know he was facilitating a crime. Then he doesn't have to plead the fifth, does he? He doesn't have to get immunity, does he? He can go in and testify. He can say, I didn't think I did anything wrong because Donald Trump told me X, Y, and Z, and I relied on that in good faith. And then he also becomes a valuable witness against Donald Trump. Evan Corcoran has no way to turn where he doesn't end up either being prosecuted if he committed crimes or being a valuable witness who incriminates his former client, Donald Trump. Why do I say former client? Because Evan Corcoran, of necessity, has to quit Team Trump. He has to withdraw from representing Donald Trump. Why? He is now conflicted. He has dual loyalties. One of his loyalties is to his client, Donald Trump, but he now has to protect himself because now he may be facing prosecution. Anytime an attorney has conflicted loyalties, dual loyalties to protect the client and to protect him or herself, they must withdraw from representation. So the next thing we may see is Evan Corcoran quitting Team Trump. Now, so much of this, friends, is sort of behind closed doors because it all involves grand jury matters, which are secret, right? Hidden from public view, unless and until there are some things that sort of erupt publicly, public court filings or leaks. So, yes, we're kind of reading tea leaves here, but the tea leaves are painting a pretty vivid picture about what's going on. And what's going on is Donald Trump is in trouble because his own lawyer is ultimately going to be either prosecuted or forced to incriminate Donald Trump. And that's a good thing because justice matters. Heating up, friends. Feels like accountability is just around the corner, at least the first step in the direction of accountability, criminal indictments. Friends, please stay safe, please stay tuned, and I look forward to talking with you all again soon.